I'm Lawana.
Yes.
And I work at Regis as a faculty member. I teach in the Women's Health Nurse Practitioner online track, the
Uh-huh.
graduate students. So it's really good job. I really love it. And it's opened a lot of opportunities, including conversations with great nurses like yourself. So I'm
Well,
going to
thank
let you
you.
just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do so that students that are watching and others that watch will have an idea.
Okay. My name is Kathy Ohlman, and I have been a master's prepared nurse for many years. My practice of nursing now is occupational. So I work in the occupational health field and have for probably the last 25 years. I actually own a company. I actually own two, but I'm the one particular with this is Workplace Solutions, and have done training consulting in companies in the Louisville region, and my state, Tennessee, around our region for many years. And it just sort of depends on what it needs. I've worked with workers' comp, I've worked with wellness, I've worked with a lot of things. And within that field, I had professionally worked with several women who were in the sleep world. And they came to me one day and said, we're trying to get all this information into companies and nobody will pay any attention to us. They just will not listen on some of the issues they need to deal with their employees with sleep. And I said, well, first of all, that's a primary care problem. That's not a work-related problem. And when you start taking on things that you're not sure you want to have to deal with, not a good idea. So we evolved some of that, and I became very active within the Kentucky Sleep Society. In fact, at one point I was president, and tried to help companies look at it in a positive perspective. And of course, when wellness came in as an important priority, which it should have done years ago, but that's water under the bridge, then that's when it became something that people became much more interested in and trying to figure out, because it does have direct impact. I mean, people have to sleep, and if they can't or won't or don't, it causes problems. So that's how I blended into that particular world.
We connected with you because, we've been doing conversations with nurses, and out of COVID has come this need for nurses. We've always known we didn't take the best care of ourselves.
Yes.
We make horrible patients. We just
we do.
But we kind of thought a little bit more about self-care, particularly now. And so Andy said, this nurse has done this great article about sleep. And I thought to myself, wow, sleep. I worked night shift for 10 years in the hospital.
Yes.
And I will tell you that my sleep pattern, I've been out of the hospital since 2014, has never went back to normal from those years of working night shift. So were there any high points you discovered in this research about sleep?
Well, clearly sleep is as critical as diet and exercise. And that's the thing that most people don't accept or recognize or want to accept, maybe. And because you always feel like, okay, I could do without sleep, and whether we've been new moms, everything. But there's a lot of stuff that we can all do to do better sleep. And that's whether you work day shift, night shift, any of the shifts, that because it is a primary need, the body has to have sleep in order to heal, repair, refile all of the information you get through the day into our, trusty file cabinets up there. And so in order for us to do that, we've got to lay that little head down. And then depending on age of person, everybody has sort of a different, and all individuals are different, but as a general rule, most adults need, 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. And if you don't get that, it will begin to wear, and it will begin to cause people problems, whether it's just being cranky or, eating habits are poor, because all of it drives together some of the circumstances. And part of it has to do with physiology. Part of it has to do with psychological stuff. I mean, there's just a lot of things that come into play with that.
Exactly.
So trying to help people, and even parents, and we've worked with that on a lot of different issues through time, learn we need to have a sleep plan for everybody. So for example, most of us, when we had kids, okay, it's bedtime. Everybody, no, I don't want to. So you would do the bath, you do the storybook, you do the little snack, whatever it was, but you had an activity that was known as bedtime activities. And a lot of kids, when you didn't do your steps, whatever they were, and whether they're 2 or 12, it threw them off. And that's where, because the body learns a habit or a pattern that helps it to calm. And that's part of what we look towards for people with, talking about different kinds of sleep issues. If we get kids started early with those kind of things, they tend to do better as life goes. Now, you and I know shift work throws the whole thing.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about just sleeping nighttime for a minute. If you can get yourself into a habit most days of doing consistently the same things to get yourself prepared. And I just read an article this week that said in an ideal world, which none of us live in, people that are statistically, or well, let's do it this way. There's correlation that if people get to sleep somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock at night, they have a less likelihood of heart attack, stroke, some of those kind of things than people that go to sleep after 11 and those that go to bed and are in bed earlier than 11 now or 10 o'clock.
Wow.
And again, that's correlation. It doesn't mean causation,
right.
But it's an interesting article to look at. But people coming to a place where most days they're pretty consistent about when they go to bed and when they wake up. If a person wants to figure out, okay, are you a lark? Do you get up early and is that okay? Or are you an owl because you like to sleep later and then, stay up at night? And then each of those has their own pieces that kind of goes along with shift work too. Because if people are larks, it's very difficult for them in many cases to work night shift because their bodies are not adjusted to that.
Yeah, I'm a lark.
Yes. And so you probably did. It was like swimming upstream. And I'm the same way. I didn't do well on night shift. Now I could do a night shift where, and again, as an educator, a lot of times we would go in and do classes around shifts, which is appropriate. But instead of working 11 to 7, we started doing 9 to 3. And that way we got home while it was still dark, got to bed. And even though you slept in later, you still sort of were in normal nighttime tasks. Wow. That was easy. We were able to do that as educators that most nurses cannot. So, you work the system best you can when you're dealing with some of the issues you have to deal with. But it's, trying to figure out what are your hours, what are the times that are best for you. Then you can figure out, how do I work around that? Now, every one of us has done the go out party, get home at 4 and
got to work.
and then try and figure out how you're going to work or, get back into a day's activity. So it doesn't mean that, every day of your life, it has to be that constant. Now, with saying that, for people that are on shift work, and especially if they're on consistent shift work, it is a good idea for them to get into a habit or a pattern that their body knows, when am I going to sleep? And these are the sort of normal hours that I routinely sleep. And this is the time I'll get up, and then letting their families know so that they don't get awakened. Emergencies clearly are different, but it's very important for them because, and that's one of the things that, with the cost of sleep is we have found, again, correlation to cancer, that they feel like night shift can become a carcinogenic.
Yeah, I was surprised to notice that not only, I knew that you needed sleep, but to see that it can be some correlation to cancer and some of the other chronic illnesses. I'm like, wow.
Yes. Well, and I did a presentation with a dear friend of mine to our National Nursing Association, AOHN, and this has been some years back. And I probably had, 400 or 500 people in the room. It was a pretty good sized conference. And when I shared that, the entire room went silent because that immediately to every nurse in that room meant you now have potential that any kind of a sleep problem or anything related to it, if the person gets cancer, you now have a workers' comp case and the company will be responsible under their workers' comp carriers to be paying for those things. So it was a major, oh my gosh, when it happened.
Wow.
So it was a matter of then saying, okay, we need to get back out and educate and do things to help. We need to watch our shift work. We need to deal with overtime. Now, again, COVID changed the world for a temporary period. I still think, yes, it's going to be here, but it's not going to be as we've dealt with it, where everybody was working hours.
Exactly.
But it is something that we need to look at to make sure we are doing the very best we can. We are not, double, triple, quadrupling people on long, overtimes and things, because it will come back and it will cause problems.
You're exactly right. I think about in that article, it mentioned that about 84% of people know they're sleep deprived and they just keep going.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, what, so how do we even begin to get people to realize that they're paying a price?
Yes.
Nurses, of course, but everyone, for that.
Yes. It's tough. And because people take sleep for granted. They assume that, it's just something I do, but I can put it off. I can do. And there are studies that are showing, and actually studies out of like car accidents and circumstances, and not just fatality car accidents, but the people that have a quantity of 2 hours or more per week that they have not gotten enough sleep, that they will actually have the same effect as if they were driving drunk.
Wow.
So that is a question that is on most police officers involved in accident things, is when was the last time you slept, and various questions specific to that, because they are finding that it is having a direct impact. There are cases of companies, one of them in particular out of Texas, and I think I shared, I can't remember if it was in that article, that somebody went home from work, had a fatality accident, and they sued the company because the person had worked long hours, etc., fell asleep at the wheel and killed somebody, and they paid for it. So it's reality.
And I can see that that's the case, because I can remember coming home from night shift. Fortunately, I didn't have to travel far, but I can remember times when I got in the car, and I remember getting in the car, and I remember getting out of the car, but the stuff in between was a little fuzzy. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm really grateful to God that I didn't.
Yes. Oh, yes. I think all of us have had experiences like that. And, sometimes it's a wake up call to say, got to deal with this, got to do something about it. And some people, it's just, no, I'm mom, I've got a job, I'm whatever it might be. I mean, and so there's things that people put that on a back burner many times that really isn't a good idea, but is something that's reality for some families.
In the research and work that you've done around sleep, have there been one or two tips that you found that really seem to help people that they don't really think about? Because I think some of it may even be simple things, right, Kathy?
Oh, they are. Oh, absolutely. Okay. I mean, first of all, how much caffeine do people eat, drink? Because that's something. In fact, I was doing a prison wellness program some years back, and had a gentleman come up to me and he said, I'm just having a terrible time sleeping. And, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, yes, it's, where he is, that's just a lot of things. But he said, do you think I drink 6 or 7, Monsters or whatever brand it was a day? Do you think that'll have an effect? And I said, I'm pretty sure it probably does, because caffeine stays in your body about 6 hours after the last one. And if you've had that much ahead of it, it may take longer. So you might think about backing off. So I was doing this program for, 6, 8 months with the system. And he came back up to me and he said, you saved my life. He said, I'm sleeping like a baby, because he completely backed off all of it and was better. So that's a quick, easy. So any of these, boost things, that makes a difference. Smokers, again, as nurses, we like to think we shouldn't do it. We ought not to, but we do. And I'm from Kentucky, where we have a lot of tobacco country. So, but, smoking causes problems because and alcohol, because they are relaxing initially, but several hours later, they become stimulants. And so people will maybe go to sleep with a, glass of wine or whatever, but then several times later, they end up with insomnia because they are suddenly awake and the stimulants affected them and they can't get back to sleep. So, those are things that just looking at, as I say, the bedtime routine, not eating big meals right before you go to sleep. So whether you're working shift work, those light meals, usually carbs, fiber type things before you go to bed at whatever time. And some people that come home from shift work can immediately come in, get situated, go to bed and be fine. Other people need to come in, get kids off to school, whatever. But again, they can go into whatever their bedtime routine is and then have that light meal and then settle themselves, read a book, do whatever. One of the biggest things they're seeing too is all the media stuff. People are working on their computers, their phones, everything until the last minute, and they lay their head down. And a lot of times that's causing people to not be able to, sleep and relax as well. So, setting all of that down and away a minimum of 15 minutes, for probably 30 minutes to an hour before you go to bed. TVs in rooms are not ideal either, because again, you've got that background. Again, my olden days, because I'm from way back, I remember when TV would go off.
I remember that too, Kathy. I'm right there with you. The flag came on and you went to bed.
Yes. And or if you fell asleep with the TV on, you had background, that white noise.
Exactly.
Now it's on 24 hours a day. And so you don't have white noise. So when you've got those peaks and troughs in sound, if you're sleeping, it's going to wake you up. And so that brings you out of deeper sleep into the higher sleep levels, which means you're not getting the full rest you need. So to turn those TVs off or have them on a timer so that that within, 30 minutes or an hour after going to bed. Somebody goes to bed, can't go to sleep, get up. If you're laying there tossing and turning, if you're not going to do it, get up. Go someplace else. Bed is for for sleep and sex.
Sleep and sex, yeah.
Yep, sleep and sex, and then just let everything else go. Now, Some people find that they can sit quietly, read in bed, and that doesn't bother them. They can still do that, and that's not a problem. But those are things each individual has to kind of work out and figure out. But if they're not going to sleep, get up, go do something else, keep your lights low, just get into a place where you can kind of calm and zen. And if there's things your brain's working on that you can't, that's part of what won't let you go to sleep, because we all have those days. Then sometimes writing it down. And just
right.
psychological.
Yeah, I do that.
Yes. Okay. I'm not going to do it now, but I'm writing it down so I won't forget it. And then I can do it later.
So you can let it go.
Yeah. You got it. And that many times helps people to deal with some of the things they need to. A cool bed space, cool, comfortable, obviously beds and sheets and mattresses and all the right things that most of us think of as a normal bedroom, are good. And your temperature anywhere, 58 is a little cool for most of us, but anywhere from 58 to 72 is kind of considered, good temperature to sleep, because as your body's going through its sleep process, it's going to be changing, biological temperatures too. And that can help you to sleep and rest better as well. So those are all things, exercise clearly is good for everybody. Don't do it right before bed. Now, some people can and don't have problems, but most people that will, it increases your,
exactly,
your system. And so usually giving 3 or 4 hours from the time you exercise to sleep is better, unless you were going on night shift. And it may be that you would do your exercise. People, a lot of times working night shift, they will come home, they will do some sleeping then, and maybe 3 or 4 hours. I found, I don't know, with me, noon was the witching hour. So if I went to bed at whatever time, and it was always noon that I would wake up.
Me too.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to our larkness. But so I would then, if I had to go in, would have to take a nap later, and you could do hour, 2 hours, whatever. Some people 15, 20-minute nap. In fact, that's what they even recommend to people doing shift work coming off the shift, that if you are truly really tired, have to drive a long distance, then you may want to do a quick 15, 20-minute nap. In fact, somebody recommended drink a cup of coffee or Coke or whatever with caffeine. It's not going to hit your system for 15 or 20 minutes. So lay down or lay back in your car and rest. That will perk you enough to get you home. And then you can, from there determine when you're going to be able to lay down. Now,
exactly.
Again, it's balancing what works for you. Dark glasses. If you're coming out, it's daytime, put on dark glasses if you're going home to go to sleep, because it's going to trigger serotonin, which is going to increase your, alertness. So it's balancing acts of some of the things that, especially for those of us that have had to work shift work, you've got to change the way the world, you look at the world. And that's a shame, but it's the reality.
And you almost think that, it almost makes me think that in places where nurses are working night shift, that there should be this, when you get hired, this set of tips that you need to follow.
Ideally, yes, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, because I didn't find out any of this, and I was miserable. I was like, I can't sleep, and then you get to work, and then no matter how good you slept, about 3 to 5 in the morning at work, you would get so sleepy that you didn't care if they found you and fired you. You just like your eyes just had to close. It was like you couldn't control it.
See, that's the low point for every biological body, is between 3 and 5 o'clock. I know. I mean, I tell people now, and I was blessed that I didn't have to work a lot of night shift. I did 3 to 11, and that worked great for me. But when, the few night shifts through the years comparatively that I worked, it was like between 3 and 5, my body said, fine, you go ahead. I'm going to bed without you. And so, my brain was just in this fog, and blessedly the good Lord took care of me and all my patients, because I never had any crisis that I know of. But it's tough, to try, and you're trying to do what you need to do. And it's not that you don't want to, it's just that your body says, no, this is not normal. And so trying to adjust it. Now, I used to, years ago when we could do this, I used to give all those night shift people hugs and just say, because a lot of them were like 40-year night shift nurses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'd like, oh, thank you, because I don't do well on night shift. And they loved it. So, all the bureaucracy was gone, and
Yeah, that's one good thing. It is a quieter
Yes.
time in the hospital because there's not
Yes.
all the things that go on in the day, but it does take a
Right.
special person to be able to do it long term.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I have
Yes. It
a
does.
nurse friend of mine that's retiring, in fact, Sunday night and probably has worked night shift 40 plus years. And I'm
Yes.
like, I don't know how you did it, but I think
I
it's
know.
amazing that you
Yes.
survived, you
Well,
know?
but they usually end up coming up with their own routine that's pretty consistent,
Exactly.
and their families know, and the family knows when they sleep. These are the hours that we have that we can spend time planning things with them, which is another good thing. And so for a nurse to just say, okay, this is the hours that I'm working and the days, this is the time I need to sleep. If they're not working because of all our new 12s, that well, new to me, I did
Hmm.
mostly eights or doubles, but
Hmm.
they, letting the family know, okay, these are the days I'm working and this is what I'm going to do. But with those folks, we still recommend, especially if they have to, to do some flip flopping and that, pick some anchor hours. So if you're going to be working 7 to 7 and only certain amounts of days, but you're going to go back to 7 to 7s, then pick 4 hours that every single day, I don't care when it is, you can lay your little head down and you can sleep. And your body
Okay.
knows then those are my chosen hours. Now you can go get to bed earlier than that, or you can get to bed later than those 4. But keeping those 4 hours becomes very important to
Okay.
try
That's
and,
great.
and, and do. So those are just little things that we can,
But those are
suggest.
great things because a lot
Yes.
of times I think when we go into the doctor and we talk about sleep, they want to give us medication.
Yes.
And there's a
Yes.
place for that, but it certainly would be good to try some of these hygiene measures first. And
Yes.
another group that could benefit that's watching this is nursing students, because
Yes.
a lot of the nursing students we have, particularly in graduate nursing, are already working. They have
Yes.
families, they're
Yes.
studying, they're trying to do
Yes.
clinical, and they're
Yes.
sleep deprived, you know?
Yes. I had 3 kids and did all those things. So
Yeah, me
yes,
too.
I agree.
I did the same thing with my 4 kids, and I was sleep
Yeah.
deprived. So
Yes, you
I'm
are.
glad that
And
we can pass that on. Wow.
so there's those are those little things. And quite honestly, medicine's short term for certain
Right.
situations are good and are fine.
Mhm.
But for a lot of the sleep issues, medicines really don't do anything but just sort of perpetuate the problem. And so
Right.
it's, we like to think in our world that there are other alternatives that we can look to. And if somebody truly has,
Right.
other than self-induced, and that's a loose term, but I'm talking shift work and some of those kind of things, new babies,
Hmm.
whatnot, there could be sleep issues that are going on with the person. And at
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
point, getting into doctor to say, okay, do I have insomnia? Do I have restless legs? Do I have periodic limb movement? Do I have OSA and, sleep apnea? Those have to be dealt with in a different way. And so
Yeah.
it's, those are the ones that need somebody to get involved and try and work through. Now, it doesn't necessarily always mean medicine, but it does mean that
Need
there
a
are
different
ways we can
level
treat.
of, yeah, of
Yes.
care. Yeah. I
Yes.
find that true too, because right now I'm in the perimenopausal kind of area. And I find that even people who've had good sleep up to this
Yes.
point, that all of a sudden you got night sweats and
Yes.
palpitations and all these things, and now
Yes.
you're not sleeping. So,
Yes.
yeah, that's
Yes.
a
And
different group.
that's,
Yeah.
it's not unusual. And older folks sleep less hours just automatically. So,
Right.
so life evolves and changes, but I think there's a lot of things that can be done out there related to sleep problems that isn't going to totally change your life. But it can be things that you can just work through and make, fit comfortably into a life pattern and not feel like you're, missing out on everything.
That's
So
great. Well, I
but it
appreciate
is
all the tips you've shared. I'm sure that everybody watching this will be able to find something they can use to be able to
hopefully
improve their sleep hygiene for sure. And
right,
when I lay
right.
my head down tonight, I'll be thanking you for some of the things that I've learned so I can
Well,
improve my
I
sleep.
hope it helps.
I think
So,
that it will. And we thank you so much for
you're
talking with
welcome.
us. It's been really great. I can see that you have a great passion about your work. And that's what I really love, is seeing people do things that they love, because it's so
Yes.
much passion in it. So I appreciate you. And Andy will let you know when we
Uh-huh.
have this posted so you can go
Okay.
back and watch our conversation.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you
Thanks
so
so much,
much.
Kathy. Take
I,
care and
I
have a great
appreciate the opportunity.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.